As we begin Unit 3, we're going to continue our discussions that we've finished at the end of Unit 2 with energy transformations. And specifically, starting with Chapter 7, we're going to be looking at how cells harvest energy and use that energy to create ATP. Because we remember that life is work. And if we wanted to break down the basic energy transformation pathways that we see driving living systems, we recall that autotrophs, these organisms that are self-feeders, are able to take inorganic carbon in the form of carbon dioxide and water, and then using an input of energy in the form of light from the sun, they harvest this light energy in a process called photosynthesis in their chloroplast. And through the process of photosynthesis, this energy transformation from light energy is now stored as potential energy in the bonds of these organic molecules like sugars. And this process also liberates some oxygen. Now, recall that anytime we transfer energy from one form to the other, we're going to be producing some heat. Now, the autotrophs require ATPs, so they take these organic molecules and using the mitochondria and oxygen, they will undergo aerobic cellular respiration, whereby these organic molecules are going to be catabolized, and this energy that's liberated is going to be used to create some ATPs that will power this cellular work. Again, we see each time an energy transformation takes place, we see the liberation of some heat energy. Now, the byproducts of this respiration that occur in these mitochondria of eukaryotic cells are carbon dioxide and water, which incidentally serve as the raw materials for photosynthesis. And we have this nice little energy circle here. Now, heterotrophs, or different feeders, jump into this here, right? They don't have the ability to harvest light energy and use these inorganic carbons and water to create their own organic molecules. So review the differences between the autotrophs and the heterotrophs. In this particular chapter, we're going to be specifically looking at the catabolic pathways and how ATP can be produced by the breakdown of those large molecules into smaller ones. So just refresh your memory about this. These large molecules, like simple sugars or sugars, have potential energy that's stored in the form of these chemical bonds that hold these large molecules together. And as these molecules are catabolized or broken down, this energy is going to be used to phosphorylate ADP to make ATP. And recall, because this is an energy transformation, the second law of thermodynamics states that we're also going to generate some heat energy. Now, we can look at two basic catabolic paths that we're going to see for how these molecules can be broken down to liberate this energy used to make ATP. And these are aerobic respiration, which is also sometimes called aerobic cellular respiration, and fermentation. Now, the two pathways are similar in certain steps, but there's a large bunch of differences that we're going to be looking at, and one of the primary differences has to do with oxygen. So aerobic respiration, as the word aerobic implies, are reactions that are going to require oxygen. And as we'll see, these reactions, for the most part, occur in the mitochondria of eukaryotic cells. Now, this aerobic respiration is a very energy efficient process at harvesting this energy, and we're going to see a considerable amount of ATPs that are created. The other catabolic pathway is a pathway known as fermentation. Now, fermentation will occur without oxygen being present, and so it doesn't require the mitochondria, and it's actually going to be less efficient than aerobic cellular respiration. And the efficiency here refers to the fact that it will make fewer ATPs per unit of glucose, for instance. Now, recall that the process to phosphorylate ADP, or to add a phosphate to make ATP, is going to require energy. And the energy in our bodies comes from the catabolism of these organic fuels that we find in our foods, right? Because as heterotrophic organisms, we require the input of these molecules to serve as these energy sources. So we're going to see how to harvest the potential energy found in glucose, in lipids, in proteins, etc. And one of the most important things that we're going to see and need to understand in how this energy transformation is going to take place is related to some chemistry known as oxidation and reduction reactions. And we're going to refer to these oxidation and reduction reactions as redox reactions.